It won't work with a finger stuck in there.
Gin, vodka.
It's not liquor, Todd.
It's moonshine.
Could be for some people.
Todd, yeah, I keep forgetting Todd. You know. We'll let it for me, Chris.
So what Chris has got here, that's the cleaver. And that basically cuts the fiber to the right length and the right... what it actually does is it scores the face of the fiber so that it can fuse together easier. So,
Oh, it's that. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which one?
always want to heat shrink it because there are times when you don't, and all you end up having to do is re-break the fiber to shrink it. So the reason this one's a little bit slower compared to some of the other machines we use is these holders right here actually have to come out of the machine. So what I'll do is I'll strip the fiber, the paint off the fiber. I have to clean it. And that's just isopropyl alcohol. I have to set it in the holder, and then I have to put the whole holder into the cleaver. Close the cleaver, hit the button, and that cut a little bit off the fiber there.
That's a quick process.
Set that in there. Yeah, the other machines that you don't have to take these out, it takes about half the time to do it.
Because it does all the work.
Yes.
One shot. Nice.
Yeah. And I have to make sure that these align correctly because this is actually made for ribbon fiber. It's made to splice 12 fibers at one time.
Huh.
So close the lid. You can see it aligning them. And the face of the fiber is nice and straight. If it's not, if it's got a chip or something on it or any kind of dust or debris or whatever, it won't splice. So it aligns them. It's 1 nanometer or 1 micrometer gap. That's good.
What's your plus or minus tolerance?
It needs to be, if it's above 2 microns, it will not splice. And then I've got a 0.01 dB loss, which is a good splice. Anything below a 0.05 dB is a good splice. If it's above 0.05, or if it's got a bubble, or if there is dust or anything in there, it can burn the dust onto the fiber.
So let's say, for example,
bad splice.
Let's say, for example, you all get finished fixing a fiber cut. Someone calls into us and we say, "Oh, there's still some stuff down, or we still got part of the metro down." Is this y'all pull this stuff back out and you check the splices?
Yeah, what we'll do?
How y'all check them?
Yeah, we've got some tools. We've got a tool. It's a light clip where basically we can put it on the fiber, and it'll tell us whether we have traffic or not on it. And
Traffic checker.
That's kind of a weird situation because if everything's spliced, if it's cut and dry, where it's just cut down the middle and we just splice it back together,
Right.
and nothing comes back up, or if, let's say, one cell tower doesn't come back up,
Right.
a lot of times when business class is troubleshooting on their end before they actually test it out and send it over to construction, they'll roll the fibers on the cell side, and then they won't flip them back. So
Gotcha.
yeah, once we splice it back the way it's supposed to be spliced, it's not going to come up because the jumpers inside the
switched.
tower are rolled.
Okay.
Because they're using their backup.
Yeah, they're basically just trying, they're trying to fix it without.
Right. Gotcha.
Now, question: when we get something back, there's a potential of bad splice. Is it because somebody like yourself kind of was beyond that threshold and said, "Screw it, let it go
No, not
anyway"?
usually. A lot of times, the machine will tell you it's a good splice. I've never had this machine tell me a bad. Give me a bad
Understood,
splice.
but when we get back, because we either got
the
bad
machine
light or
sometimes is
DB
wrong.
is too. Okay.
Sometimes the machine is wrong. All it does is it basically sends light through each end of the splice, but it has to do it between a small gap of where the paint's straight back. And when it does that, it gives you your estimated reading. It's just an estimation. Sometimes I've seen it where it's not even spliced, and it's telling you I've got a good splice.
Okay, so
You
why,
can see the gap in between the two.
why would the optical go up in effect?
Well, like when you're putting stuff back
On-
together
on-
too,
why would it
you
go
get a bend
high?
or a break or whatever.
Yeah.
When you're
See,
slapping it all together.
I left this out while it's cooling because if this was still hot, these turn kind of a white color while it's cooling. But if this was still clear, it means it's still hot. I really wouldn't even be able to touch it. But if I would have set that in there while it's still hot, that's enough.
re-break
That's
it.
enough to put a macro bend in the fiber
Yeah.
and cause low light.
Right.
Okay.
So once you do that process there, you just
So
leave
why-
it long
why would
time.
there be-
What's the cooling, the time for the cooling for that?
I usually let it cool until I can pick it up, really. But like I said, it'll be clear when it's still really hot, and then 30 seconds is probably enough.
Cool.
So is that possible then from the previous splicing that when they go ahead and splice it because of whatever this fiber cut is, and then all of a sudden we have a high optical, and it's like, wow, well,
Yes.
now we have to
Yeah,
add at the hub to get it back down again.
Yeah, and we actually see that a lot with nodes, where it may have been a bad splice at one point, and we go out and whether we just resplice it or we do a reroute or something like that, where we splice it back together. For example, I had a reroute off of 812 by the F1 track. It was a 288 count. We got done splicing it, and one of the nodes, after we were done, had like plus 8 dB of light at the site. And that's because somebody at one point, the fiber, either was a bad splice or the fiber was bad. And instead of having us go out there and fix it correctly,
They padded it.
What they actually did in that instance was put a high power laser in.
Oh, wow.
And just pumped as much light into it as they can.
Oh, so then when you did it properly, then it just went through the roof.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like a typical
Burning
laser
up
in
the
the hub,
optic.
a laser in the hub is going to put out no more than 6 dB of light.
Yeah.
And at the node, you have to have minus 3 dB of light. So when this was at plus 6 leaving the hub, on a regular laser, they put in a high power laser to compensate for the loss, which could have been 4 or 5 dB or
It
whatever.
was probably a short distance too.
Everything out there is pretty short. So it ended up being with 6. The high output lasers put out 12 dB of light.